This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about some time management myths that you may have learned in the pool industry and the reality of some time management myths that people are doing that aren't effective. And I'll break this down for you so you kind of get an idea of where I'm going. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. I'll start with this first one, and I've been guilty of this myself, and that is thinking that if I rush through my day, I'm going to be able to, do one more thing, like pick up my supplies at a certain time, or I have to go back and take care of a problem at another pool. So if I just speed things up during my day, I'll be able to squeeze those things in. And invariably what happens is that as I'm rushing through my day because I wanted to squeeze these things in that I probably should have left margin for or planned better, what happens invariably is that you're going to make a mistake. And I've done this before and I've learned from this, but I've also redid it again. So I guess I didn't learn too much the first time. But rushing through the day causes mental lapses. I'll give you an example. So I remember one day I was just trying to get finished so I can go do something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know I was rushing pretty hard to get through the day. And I finished the pool and I went to my next pool. And when I got there, my pool pole wasn't there, nor was my leaf rake. And I'm like, well, what happened to my pole and leaf rake? Did it fall off my truck? Did it fall somewhere in the street? So then I just started thinking back for a minute, and I'm thinking, and I remember I was loading my truck up, and I was in a rush, and I put my net and leaf rake down on the grass out by my truck so I can get my vacuum system on there and connected. And so I was in such a rush that I forgot to pick up the leaf rake and the net attached to it and put it in my truck. So I ended up driving all the way back to the stop to get it. And that's when I realized that my rushing to get through, to squeeze something else in, was counterproductive. And you may have a similar example when you're trying to rush through your day. Another example, and this is a very embarrassing one, but I was rushing through my day because I was doing my filter cleanings at that time. And when you're doing the filter cleanings, you know that you try to squeeze extra time out because you're just trying to do 3 or 4 filters and you're doing your normal route and you're just trying to speed things up. And so I was doing this, and it was a Pentair 4000 series filter. And you've probably done this, or you may have not done this, but maybe one day you will do this. But there's a rotor valve on the bottom of this filter. And it's one of those things where I was rushing and I put it in backwash mode, of course, because that's what I do when I clean the filters. I drain them in backwash mode so that I can clean the tank. And then I put everything back together. But for some reason, and it's because I was in a rush, I didn't pull the rotor valve back to the filter mode. And so I went over to the pool and I started charging up the filter with DE. And then, of course, I saw the water level dropping and I was like, that's weird. The water level is dropping. What happened here? And then I realized it's in backwash mode still. So I stopped the pump and I quickly put it back in filter mode. But the way the backwash of a pool filter works is that everything goes inside the grids. And what happened when I did this and I put it back to filter mode, all the DE went back into the pool. And so the pool turned completely cloudy. And to make matters worse, the customer was out there doing gardening and she saw the whole thing happening in like real time. Really embarrassing. And then everything settled to the bottom, of course, and I came back and vacuumed it out. And that, of course, took more time. So rushing does not make anything more effective. In fact, maybe you'll get away with it 1 or 2 times without any kind of major problem. But I can guarantee you something is going to bother you. You're going to be like, did I put tablets in the floater? Or did I close that gate properly? Because you're not thinking, you're not at your regular pace. And so everything's accelerated. So I would say that rushing is probably one of the worst things you can do in pool service to help you with time management. It's actually the opposite. What you should do is build in margin on your day so that you have time to do something that's not scheduled. So instead of stuffing your day completely full, which is another problem as well, and I'll touch on that in a minute, leave yourself a little bit of margin so that you can squeeze in a stop at the supplier or have time to go back to take care of a problem that needed to be taken care of. So again, rushing will cause more problems than it's actually worth. And on the other side of that is stacking your route so full of pools and jobs and things you have to take care of that you have zero margin in your day. And of course, time is money. So thinking out there, and this is a trap that I've fallen into before as well, is that, well, if time is money and I can do 2 more pools on Thursday because I can squeeze them in there and I'm going to make more money and it's not a big deal. I'm just going to be pushing myself to the limit on Thursday. You know, the sun's going down, but I can do this. The problem is when you're up against that kind of no margin day, something is going to happen, which always happens. You know, something simple, like I'll give you an example. I had one of these no margin days and I was fixing a rainbow chlorinator. Basically, just the tube was broken on it. So I'm replacing the tubing. And then I go to connect it to the chlorinator and then the black valve part that the tube goes on snaps. So now I'm fixing this part and it's taking me a lot longer to do. I have to go back to my truck to get the part. I'm getting frustrated now because something that should have taken 2 minutes is now taking 5 or now 10 minutes because I'm looking in my truck for a spare part that I should have access to, but I'm not organized at that moment because I'm rushing all the time and I'm not giving myself margin or I don't take time to organize my stuff. And so now I'm 10 minutes behind and then I go to another stop and let's say the customer forgets to unlock the gate. So I have to wait for them to come out of the house and then they start talking to me. And at that point, my day is going bad because now I know that I still have 14 pools to do and I have really no margin now and I've already used up all of my spare time, so to speak. And then you're driving and there's an accident somewhere ahead and you're stuck in traffic. And by then you're ready to blow a gasket because now you have zero margin and it's all your fault really because you stacked your day to the point where there's no margin and things are going to happen and things are going to delay you. And you have to have that built-in margin. That's better time management, in my opinion, to have just a little bit of time built in to where if something were to happen, it's not the end of the world. And invariably, if you can't get to all your pools, you have to put them on another day and finish that. That pushes the other day back. So it's kind of a snowballing effect, really, if you don't have some kind of margin. Now, a lot of people start out in the business and they really stuff their day with so many things to do because they really feel like they need to do this to make money. And it's understandable, especially if you're transitioning from one field to another and this is all the money you're getting, all the income you're getting. It's almost acceptable that you have no margin in your day because you're hungry and you're trying to get work and you're doing a green pool cleanup in the middle of your route and then later that day you're going to drain a pool for the acid wash the next morning. Understandable. But if it's the normal way you do business and this is how you run your business after you're established, there's definitely a problem there at that point. So yes, there is a time when you're scrambling, you're doing bids, you're trying to get as many accounts as you can, you're picking up jobs that other people pass on because you really need the money and you need that service account later from that particular job. That's understandable. But you should not be running your business with no margin continuously because you're going to face burnout and frustration And to be honest with you, you're not going to do the job that you're supposed to do. A lot of times when you're rushing or have no margin, you're cutting corners. There's just no way around it. You get to a pool that you should vacuum, but you're like, well, I don't have time to vacuum it. I'm just going to use my leaf rake, get out most of the debris, and the automatic cleaner will get the rest. This is the time when the customer comes out to check on a sprinkler or something and sees that you just left and the pool's still dirty. This is going to happen. And just because you have no margin, you're not doing your job correctly. Maybe you're not even doing the chemical readings because you're in such a rush that you're not even testing the water. This has happened to me, so I know this is going to happen to everybody because I didn't have any margin built in. And then bad things happen. So I've learned from all these mistakes when I first started out that if you don't have a built-in margin, or if you're rushing, which I talked about at the beginning, you're in a world of hurt because bad things happen when you're just not focused on your task. And here is another, I wouldn't say this is a myth, but it's something that people don't put a lot of thought into, and that is the routine. I think a routine is really important, and a lot of people don't have a set routine for whatever reason, or maybe they don't follow the set routine. But I think the routine is crucial out there, especially if you're talking about time management and not making mistakes, because if you do forget something, you have to go back and do it. So I think a routine is really important. The first thing I do when I get to a pool is I look at the pool. I know that sounds weird, but I'll just stand there and look at it for a few seconds, 10 or 15 seconds, I guess. And I'll look at the pool to make sure it looks fine. Because you can notice a lot of things just by looking at the pool. You can see that maybe the pool filter's not been running because everything looks stagnant on top, or the water doesn't look crystal clear. There's some problem here. So looking at the pool does start my process when I get to a backyard. It's one of the simple things you can do, but looking at the pool, a lot of people will walk back there and go right to the equipment area or whatever. But I actually take some time to look at the pool. Then, of course, I just check. And looking at the pool, by the way, can also be evidence that the pool is being used. There's like toys in there and floats. There's water balloons all over the place. Something like that tells you there's been a party. So that's an important factor. Then what I'll do is I'll put my equipment down, and then I'll head over to the pool equipment, and I'll inspect the pool equipment. I really like getting to the stop when the pool's not running if I can. That's not always the case, but a lot of times the earlier pools that I get to, I like everything to be off so I can turn it on manually, because a lot of things can be discovered by you turning the pool on. So I'll turn the pool on, and then of course I'll look for any leaks. That's something that I take a little bit of time for. Sometimes I'm busy and I don't do it as thoroughly, but I do like to look for leaks around the equipment area. I also look at the pressure gauge on the filter. It's just a habit. Sometimes there's no difference week to week, but I do like to look at that. I'll look in the pump basket to see if there's any debris in there. I don't necessarily empty the pump basket all the time, but I will look in there for debris because sometimes there's nothing in there. And then I'll go over to the pool and I'll check the chemistry. Now you see where I'm going here with the routine. I do the same thing at every pool. So then I check the chemistry of the pool. Now I'll add the chemicals before I leave the stop. I don't usually add the chemicals while I'm there before I clean the pool, but I like adding them at the end so that I stay in my routine. Now, of course, you can do this in any kind of pattern you want to do it in. This is the one that I do it in. And then I will, of course, spray some soap on the surface, and then I'll skim the pool, brush the tiles, and then I will vacuum the pool, or I'll skim the bottom of the pool. Then at the end, I'll brush the pool. It gives it a nice consistent look at the end. And then, of course, I will add the chemicals to the pool. Now, if you break from this routine, and I've had this happen to me where I'm, getting ready to do one of these steps and the customer comes out. It's like, oh yeah, I have this problem here. Can you take a look at it? And you go over there and then you get back out, but you forget a step that you were doing. And this happens. And, I've forgotten to add chemicals to the pool before at the end when I get distracted. This has happened to me as well. So it's important to stay in the routine because you'll catch yourself and you'll be like, you get back to your truck and you'll be, did I add the chemicals? I think I forgot. You go back over there because you have that routine built in. But if you don't have that patterned routine, you're not really going to know if you missed something. And by the way, I will clean the skimmer basket at the end, mainly because I've stepped in there before an accident. I like to leave the skimmer lid on if I can. When I vacuum a pool manually, I'll actually put the vacuum hose over the deck into the skimmer lid on top. That way I don't step in there while I'm vacuuming the pool. It's actually a good safety tip. So again, if you're going to manually vacuum the pool with the pool system, instead of putting the hose through the skimmer, I like going over the top of the coping and going into the skimmer so that if I do step there, I'm not going to break my ankle, which some pool guys have broken their ankle. Since I mainly use a vacuum system, I don't manually vacuum too many pools because I have automatic cleaners in them. So I'm always making sure I check the skimmer basket at the end before I leave. And this is important too because it could be full. Some people check the skimmer basket at the beginning. That's fine too. You just want to make sure you don't leave that open so you step in there when you're cleaning the pool. I find it to be a hazard. And of course, you never want to leave the pool with the skimmer lid off somewhere. And then what I'll do at the end, and this is something I think is really important, and I think people fail to do this because they're in a rush or they're, pressed for time. I'll turn around and I'll look at the pool to make sure I didn't miss anything. And this is important because sometimes you miss something. I've caught myself leaving the skimmer basket out. I've caught myself leaving something behind, like a brush or something. So looking at the pool to make sure it looks good. And then, of course, you want to make sure the automatic cleaner is moving in the pool. All these things are done in a routine, and it should be something that you keep in that routine so that you don't lose time having to second guess yourself and go back to the pool. So find out what works for you, which routine works for you. But all this can be lost if you're, again, rushing through your day or you have no margin, because then you can't stay in your routine and you're rushing and you're cutting corners and you're missing something in your routine. And therefore, it's like a chain reaction again, where you have to really be conscious of not rushing, leaving margin, and then sticking to the routine. All these things, of course, are part of life and part of business, and everyone's been rushing, everyone's left no margin, and everyone's gotten out of the routine before. But I think if you focus on these things, you can really improve the time management on your pool route without really doing anything except working on these aspects. Not getting a tighter route, not starting earlier, not working longer. It's really a matter of just being cognizant of where your time is wasted and how your time can be wasted when you think you're being productive at that same time, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. Going faster and getting more things done during the day can actually be counterproductive to actually doing a better job, and having more margin will create actually a better work environment, and it'll keep you mentally sharp as well and focused. So you're not really worried about your time because you have a set routine, and you're not really stressed about getting things done because you know you have margin in a day, and you're able to stick to your routine because you're doing both of those things. If you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. You click on the podcast icon on the banner. That'll take you to a drop-down menu where I have over 1,600 episodes. And if you're looking for the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.